So the creator of Highlander brings us a different kind of fantasy franchise, as angels and theology stand in opposition to one another, and human souls are caught in between, as Christopher Walken stars in the Prophecy Trilogy. As the second war in heaven is waged for eons, the angel Simon descends to Earth to keep the darkest human soul away from the renegade faction. A soul that the Archangel Gabriel intends to use to lead his army. Meanwhile, former seminary student Thomas Daggett saw a vision of this war, just as he was supposed to be ordained as a priest. Now as a police detective, he comes face to face with Simon, who was there the day Thomas's faith was broken. Yet shortly thereafter, the angel is attacked by a renegade, whom he throws out a window to his death. When the coroner Joseph knows the bizarre biology of the cadaver, and Thomas thumbs the Bible with chapters that shouldn't exist, the former would-be priest delves headlong into making sense of it all. Meanwhile, Gabriel comes to Earth and follows Simon's trail to Chimney Rock, Arizona, where Simon absorbs the dark soul of Colonel Arnold Hawthorne. Hiding out in the local schoolhouse, Simon encounters and trusts the soul of the Native American girl Mary, as it has weakened him to where he won't be able to keep it safe from Gabriel. That night, Gabriel arrives to interrogate him, but when the devout Simon refuses to give up the location of the soul, even after the Archangel tortures and burns him, Gabriel finally kills his brother by extracting the heart. As Daggett arrives in the small town, he questions schoolteacher Catherine about the Colonel, but soon discovers the hidden dark secrets in the late Hawthorne's home. As Thomas and Catherine attempt to protect Mary from Gabriel and his human lapdog Jerry, they see the savagery that has slain countless angels, and learn that in this stalemate, no human soul has been allowed to enter heaven. Even as Lucifer lends aid to humans to prevent heaven from becoming another hell, ruled through tyranny and spite, the expulsion of this blackened soul and the defeat of Gabriel will not be the end. Later, the angel Danielle takes on a mission to impregnate a human woman, Valerie Rosales, to give birth to a Nephilim. Meanwhile, Lucifer ejects Gabriel back onto Earth to continue the fight in this war and to stop this union of angel and human. Yet this child is prophesied to aid the Archangel Michael's side in quashing the renegade angels and ultimately defeating the genocidal angel Puriel from coming to power. All the while, Gabriel will have to rediscover his faith and earn back the grace that he lost along the way. So the origin of the prophecy comes to us from writer-director Gregory Widen, who previously written Highlander, directed by Russell McKay, and Backdraft, directed by Ron Howard, and directed a 1993 episode of the HBO series Tales from the Crypt, so he got a little bit of experience behind the camera in that regard, but at this point in time, in the early 90s, he's kind of looked to develop a screenplay that be low enough budget that he could direct it himself. And so kind of approached people like producer Joel Swarson. They kind of go out and find investors. They kind of get interest in the whole thing, back the thing financially. And so internationally it was a lot easier than it was domestically. Domestically, they had some problems with some studios. Kind of looked at the concept, kind of like, oh, well, we'll back it, but can we change this from like Angels to Demons or something else like that? Kind of change like the base core concept that the entire themes of the entire story revolve around. And so they said we were not changing that element of the script whatsoever. But eventually they found Robert Little, who felt like, I want to take a chance on this. I want to put up the money for it and see how you can go along with it and really believe in the project and that entire thing. And he would executive produce the following two sequels of the franchise. And so when they finally got the entire thing produced, they kind of cornered Dimension Films to be the distributors on the entire thing, and they eventually did pick it up. And on September 1st, 1995, the prophecy was released theatrically. And from a 2016 Projection Booth podcast interview with Gregory Widen, he did say the film cost $3 million to produce. Now, if that is accurate, then the $16.1 million it grossed at the box office is definitely a major return on investment for a film of this type of way. And just no wonder that it would become a franchise after this release, despite the fact that everything else going direct to video, never going theatrical again. But the fact of the matter is, the first film came out with such great quality overall. What they put into the film was vision and production quality and star power behind it. A lot of things in the entire film really was catching a lot of great things at the exact right time to get the right cast, get the right people involved behind the camera, have a lot of things go in the right directions in certain places. So It's a very good type of thing. They just found all the right elements to strike the chord to make this a really solid success of a film. And Widen does such a great job as a director, creating a very honest and grounded tone, because he knew dealing with sort of these fantastical elements to create a grounded sensibility makes it more realistic, makes it more believable, easier for the audience to ease themselves into the concept and believe what's going on the screen. So the more earnest you can make it, the more connected the audience can be to the emotions and the themes of the story overall. So it does a very solid job in that regard, crafting all the things of tone and character and story and theme together in a very cohesive package overall, backed by some fantastic cinematography. Now, they did have two cinematographers on the film, Bruce Douglas Johnson, and then there's Richard Clayball, who they brought up from the second unit after Johnson was doing some fantastic work, but on the budget they had and the time they had was working too slowly. And so they brought Clayball up to supplement what he was doing. And apparently, for some reason whatsoever, Johnson had to kind of bow out for a certain point in time, and Clayball stepped up for the entire rest of the production. But apparently, Johnson came back to do color timing and various other things in post-production. But overall, it's a very consistent product. Like the two guys, whatever scenes they're doing, they don't clash at all. It's not like there's shows that there's two different people working behind the lens of the entire camera here. They're working under the same director, implementing the same sort of ideas and aesthetics and lighting and qualities overall to really bring forth such great things on the entire thing, because they got these magnificent desert vistas over the entire place and using such beautiful sunset imagery and various other things, like everything they use, from like these great crane shots where they had these entire thing, like all these shots would start up very high up, like they're looking down from the heavens and gradually coming down to the earth and stuff like that. They constantly had that as a visual motif in the film they kind of use over and over again to give that sensibility of angels coming down to the earth and various other things like that. So very interesting ways how to use the camera movements in the entire film to create dramatic push-ins and kind of highlight different elements here and there, and using some moody lighting in some places as well. It looks absolutely beautiful now in Dolby Vision 4K. And I feel so much the Arizona locations they use for the film just creates such a great mood overall. Just setting in that location creates this wide open landscape, kind of a mystical sensibility on the entire film, and getting back to the Native American tribe and everything like that, having that culture there as well to influence a lot more in the film. It's like it's great elements overall that influences and informs what the film is doing with the narrative, with the culture, with the soul of the characters, and all the different things. It's very well done, and the cast they put together this film is just absolutely brilliant. Top to bottom, inside and out, there's so many great talents here. First time with Elias Koteas. You know him so well from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Fallen, Chicago PD. So it's a wide variety of very diverse roles that he can really inhabit so very well. And Thomas Egg is such a very interesting one to have. It's not easy for an actor to kind of grapple with overall, because his character was going to be an ordained priest, but he sees all the visions from heaven, and it wounds him. It kind of makes him lose his faith because he questions what it was he was believing in. If this is what he's seeing from heaven, from God sending him these messages, why am I believing this butchery, this savagery, everything like that? So it's too much. And so he loses that faith. But as a cop now, he goes through the entire investigation here, learns very dark stuff, very troubling stuff, very terrifying stuff, but slowly and gradually rediscovers what his faith means, and finding what his soul means, and having all those reflections. There's someone who's dark as Gabriel, talking with Lucifer, seeing all these different contexts of where these ancient entities, who are supposed to be higher beings than him, have grappled with those elements of faith and losing love and various other things, and just being wayward entities in this cosmic battle of faith and all that type of stuff. It's wonderful what Elias Koteas does from beat to beat in the entire film, bringing forth a very relatable, soulful, fractured, vulnerable type of character, but is able to stand up and find that strength, find that resolve back within him, and does a really fantastic job. So like every time I see this guy on screen, he's knocking it out of the park, 100%, all the time, and just like he's such a great, solid leading man for the entire film. Koteas, fabulous talent overall, but interesting enough, working opposite Eric Stoltz here. And this is not the first time they worked together. They previously worked together on Some Kind of Wonderful, the John Hughes penned, Howard Deutsch directed film, and that was a great thing. Both those are great. Koteas is great in that film. Stoltz is great in that film. Just great camaraderie, great chemistry between the two of them on that film. So I feel like when they stepped on the set for this one, still maintained that great working relationship overall. And I just love what Eric Stoltz does with Simon. It's like that one scene the two of them have together, it's got that great soulful quality, but you can definitely see the pain quality behind Simon. It's like he's so regretful that this war is happening, but he is a soldier, and he is a true believer in the greatness of humanity. All the different things you need for this character to be the one that kind of go out and do the work, to take that dark soul and hide it away from Gabriel, knowing what it's going to do to him, knowing it's going to poison him, it's going to deteriorate him, it's going to hurt him so very deeply, it's pretty much going to kill him overall. He knows what he has to do, but he's so selfless about the whole thing, and just like the ethereal sensibility he brings to the entire character just exudes out so much with such a great warmth he has. I like the vulnerability the character has, but also the great resolve. When you have Stoltz against Christopher Walken, that one scene, and Gabriel is just torturing him, he's tearing him apart, he's burning him almost to a cinder to kind of torture the information out of him. And I like that quality between the two characters, between Gabriel and Simon. There's like, Gabriel's like, you're a tough one, man. You're old school. And really respects it as like, you're not going to give it up. I respect the fact that you're that loyal and stuff like that. So it's like this great element of that character to send him off with, to make sure he has a great memorable end, and does a great job with Simon, but definitely Christopher Walken. He was the one that they signed originally, and they apparently wrote the character of Gabriel particularly for him, because if they can get a guy like Walken, Academy Award winner, major star, major actor, attached to a film like this, that would definitely carry along to get the investors and all the other stars and all the people signing on, because like, yeah, I want to work with Christopher Walken. He's a fantastic actor. It's great work. And so it's just like, this is one of those iconic roles. I mean, the guy has no shortage of iconic roles whatsoever. But so many genre fans know what he's done in this film specifically, with this character in general, and what he does, it's powerhouse. He's so electric on screen. Just the way he does his timbre. Because apparently when he gets a script, he removes all punctuation. That's how you get the particular cadence he has with his line deliveries. How he kind of has these different ways he goes about things. He makes these kind of light and kind of moving around kind of loosely, but then gets down deep and guttural, or doing various things. Like he's got this energy, this charisma, this kind of spontaneity, this intensity to the role and everything like that. So it creates kind of an unpredictability about what the character is going to be doing at certain points in time, but he finds the character in the dialogue. So he's not doing the same thing with every character he gets. He modulates. He finds what drives that character so much. He finds so much what the righteousness is of Gabriel here, because it comes down to so much of that jealousy of humanity being risen above the angels, when the angels were created first, when he loved us first. There's so much of things like he's so pining for that love and affection and that sort of attention, that kind of justification for everything he's doing. I love the quality of the character. I love what Walken was able to find within the dialogue and all the different things that inform who he is and why he's doing what he's doing, and bring that to the surface of a character who's lost that faith, same as Thomas Daggett has. I like those elements of what he found in the character to drive that hatred, that anger, that toxicity of the character in a certain way. And what he does is overall just like it creates such a bombastic, interesting character that can both be scary one moment and very entertaining the next. He finds those ways to create a character that has those dynamics that all flow together. They all make sense within the personality, what he's putting together for the character overall. So when he's got scenes like with Adam Goldberg, who he brought back pretty much from the dead to a certain degree, to kind of pull him back as being his monkey, his pet monkey in a certain way, to kind of drive him around, do the dirty work and stuff like that. It's great comedy moments. It's great humor overall. It's great stuff because, one, it's wonderfully written in that regard, but Walken takes that dialogue and crafts it into the character so much and makes it all make sense within the package he puts together for the whole thing. So Walken is magnificent in the film. And no wonder that the fact that, like, we can't do the next two sequels without having Christopher Walken. There's, like, no way whatsoever. He is the thing to support the entire thing on. He's the thing that jumped out of people so much. It's like that's such the crux of what made the film so deeply compelling, aside from all the other very, very compelling roles. But this one just like this was blockbuster, magnificent, amazing type of stuff he did in the whole thing. So it's like they knew what they had,
And apparently, there were some little things, I guess, because like someone like Joel Sorzan, not a highly experienced producer, and certainly we have someone's doing directing their first feature film. And apparently there's one point in time where Walken, being very cordial, being like super professional in certain things, walked up to Joel and said, can we talk about something? And so they took him and walked him all the way to like the furthest end of like the trailers and everything like that, way far away from everyone else, and gave him the biggest dressing down of everything in the world, saying this feels like amateur production. You people don't know what you're doing. You got to shape up. All of a sudden, walking on the whole thing. So he gave him the full dressing in that regard. But after that, just kind of walked off. They just kind of like had a cordial thing. So it's like apparently kind of just helped shape the shabbiness of some of the elements of the production back into form in that regard, because like you don't want to lose this guy. You got him signed on. He's a major movie star, fantastic actor. He's a crux of the entire thing that's holding up the entire film. What everyone signed on for, all the different things. Like this is the marketing material to push the film forward. You don't want to lose this guy, so you want to just like hear him out. And it's like, yeah, we gotta kind of shape up what we're doing and get things on the right track. So definitely the respect paid for that. And of course, because of that, he comes back for 2 more films in a franchise. Moving on beyond that, Virginia Madsen. Talk about an actress who's just absolutely phenomenal. Even if she gets some roles and stuff that's not particularly good, we'll always talk about Highlander 2, but also you get stuff like Candyman and various other things. She's just always such a beacon on screen. She's so bright. And she does such a great job as a character of Catherine here, the school teacher in this tight-knit small community here. She's very much protective of the kids. And when kind of Thomas comes around asking questions, kind of goes off to Mary's settlement in that regard, and she's kind of protective, kind of creating some interference in that regard. And when she sees Gabriel with the kids, she's also doing the whole thing. So it's a very warm-hearted character with a lot of strength to her. I like the quality that she is someone who'll stand up to someone like Gabriel. And even though she's afraid of him, scared like hell, she won't bat an eye to pull the trigger on the whole thing. And it's a very good thing. Just like she brings so much strength to the role, so much resolve as well. And she gets her kind of faith tested and beliefs tested at a certain point in time when she's got to face-to-face with Lucifer, the devil himself. Certainly rattles her, and she's got to kind of contemplate certain things, try to resolve all this type of stuff in her head. And so it's interesting, I think, just such a great co-lead with Elias Koteas. Like, they have really good vibes between the two of them. I like the fact they didn't make them like a romantic couple or anything like that. Pretty much their own characters on their own paths. They have a great synergy overall on screen in that regard. But Viggo Mortensen. And the interesting thing about Lucifer in the entire film, Viggo wasn't the first choice. Originally it was Malcolm McDowell who was going to play the devil in the film, but apparently he had a scheduling conflict, and he had to bow on the entire thing, but by no means is this a downgrade. My God, Viggo Mortensen was fantastic in this role. And the fact is, he is rising up at this point in time. The back half of the 90s, he's working with Tony Scott on Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman. Then it goes off to G.I. Jane with Ridley Scott, Demi Moore. He's just building up the Lord of the Rings at the dawn of the next century. This guy is on a fast track to different things, and my Lord, what he does, he's so sullen, terrifying. What he does, the few minutes of screen time he has, it feels like he's crawling up on your skin so much. My God, he owns the role so much. He just knows the darkness of the character. And what he's bringing to the screen is that deep down, ancient vileness. And they have the entire thing like, oh, you break up the boss. And all the different things like you're falling out with God. And various other things, the love that was lost. And various things. So they're tapping on those things. Which creates such a bitterness of Lucifer in the entire film. And though he's kind of like, well, this war in heaven is going to create another hell. That's one hell too many. I'm not going to have you supplanting me or replacing me or anything like that. It's like, heaven's one thing. You have that. I don't have that anymore. You kicked me out. I have this now. This is what I am, and that's what you're not. And Virgina thinks it's like it's very much that type of thing. And the fact is, now Lucifer has to help humanity, even though he doesn't love humanity. He loved God. When the whole thing was like, okay, humanity's created, and God loves humanity above you guys. That's when Lucifer had all this type of stuff. That's why he fell. It's interesting stuff. It's like it's such an interesting thing, and that's coming from a writer who definitely knows the scripture and all the Old Testament type of stuff, all these different things to feel out what the mythology, the lore is overall, and have a way to craft it into this entire world and to the story to create those elements of the themes of the entire story here comes together so very well. And just like Mortensen, it's just brilliant in the role. Every single moment he has, even though right at the end, after he's taken out Gabriel to a certain degree, and he kind of turns over to the Native Americans, and Viggo actually asked the Native Americans how I would say this line, which is written in English in the script, in your language. So we could have the fact that like Lucifer would know all the languages. He would know all the words of man. So it makes more sense to have that. Just little touches like that makes him a very meticulous, interesting, and brilliant actor. So he gets those little details. The fact is, again, he's a guy who's got to go up against Christopher Walken, who up to this point is established as a very frightening, intimidating, threatening figure. And they've got the next step up. And the fact is, these two heavyweights are kind of going up a little bit in the entire scene. They're not, as actors, spiteful to anyone, but they're feeling like there's a challenge here. We kind of, each one wants to up their game against the other. So kind of like getting the entire thing. So it's a great thing to see two actors who are just bringing the full heavyweight type of stuff, and they really want to kind of just pile on the entire thing to make it the best scene possible and make both their characters feel as strong and powerful as possible. But of course, Lucifer wins out in the end. The whole thing. Gabriel is definitely not the winner of the entire film, but just critical things over the board for the entire cast here. Steve Hytner as Joseph the coroner, who will talk much more in the entire sequels, but everyone knows him as Kenny Bania from Seinfeld. But here in this franchise, he definitely shows a completely different side to himself. There really is a very good character actor in that regard, but so much great things in the entire cast. It's just a blockbuster cast. Everyone shines so much. Even Moriah, Shining Dove Snyder, playing Mary, does a very, very good job to create this complexity of the entire character who's been invaded by this dark soul that Simon had to hide inside her because he knew that Gabriel was going to be coming down upon him eventually, and he couldn't hide it from him being inside himself. So she does a great job showing that conflict and the darkness that's kind of eating her whole to a certain degree and finding that conflict overall. She does a great job gelling with everyone in the entire cast. The entire cast is put together so wonderfully and written so extremely well in that regard. And an interesting little factor on the first film is the fact that the original title for the film was God's Army. But unfortunately, because there's a lot of different religions throughout the entire world, putting out as God's Army in different markets would kind of imply different things, so they changed it to Prophecy. But there is an alternate version of the film called God's Army in different markets. And it's not the same cut of the film because, one, it doesn't start with the entire thing with Simon have the opening narration and stuff like that. It starts out as young Thomas Daggett talking with the voice of Lucifer. And it's a very interesting type of thing. And there's some extended dialogue bits here and there in the film, especially towards the end of the film. We have Elias Koteas and Virginia Madsen kind of having some discussions here and there towards the climax of the film, and some other little pieces here and there. So it's an interesting little thing. It's not widely available, but you can find it on the German 4K release of the first film, which includes the Prophecy cut and the God's Army cut, which is kind of cobbled together between HD and SD upscaled footage, but has a lot of new bonus features that are not on the Viggo original release of the film. And so it's a little bit of an interesting alternate version of the film that if you can track it down, be a nice thing to kind of grab in that regard. And the music of the Prophecy comes to us from composer David C. Williams, who later do things like Phantoms, Wishmaster 2, Supernova, a couple other things here and there. Nothing too splashy in that regard, but he does a really great job with the whole thing. Like the choral music, as you would definitely have to have the whole thing, create that sort of church choir to a certain degree, that kind of element that would create this much more angelic, heavenly feel for the entire film. But such the scope of the entire music captures and matches what goes on with those vast landscapes of the entire film. You create such a deep, rich layers and themes for the entire film that just echo through the entire soul of what's going on in the entire film so much. Like he does a really, really great job. And apparently, both his scores for the Prophecy and the Prophecy 2 are available up on Bandcamp. The only place they're officially available on is there, and they're apparently expanded ones. One for Prophecy 3, where he was not involved, to kind of reuse some of the themes for it, which was done by Stephen Bodecker. Apparently it's not officially available anywhere that I could find. Apparently some like playlists on YouTube here, you could kind of check things out here and there, but I didn't find anything on like a YouTube Music, Apple Music, anything like that here and there or whatnot just found the Bandcamp stuff for David C. Williams stuff, but definitely check it out. Definitely go grab it if you're very much interested in the whole thing. And they also had a Skid Row track attached to the film as the end credits song, breaking down from the third album, Subhuman Race, which was released as a single in November of 1995. And the music video doesn't have any footage from the film, but they definitely kind of laid on the thematic material, symbolism of the film, with stuff in churches and cemeteries and having a lot of angelic imagery. So they kind of tied it in kind of thematically in that regard. And so very nice stuff, I think, very good track, very good type of stuff in Skid Row at the time. But visual effects, for all the stuff they have for like images, the war in heaven, the angels being slain, all the different things, very good type of stuff. Like, it holds up pretty nicely. Especially the stuff like right at the end of the film when they see the evil soul kind of expelled from the body of Mary, which was an addition they made after the film was sold to Dimension Films. And so it holds up nicely. It's not the best type of stuff, but it's used in a restrained, limited capacity that holds up nicely for what it is 30 years on. And certainly a lot of the makeup effects were done very, very well, having all the stuff where the angels kind of get skewered and killed and everything like that, have the black eyes and all the different things, the gore bored out of the entire chest and everything like that. A lot of great stuff in that regard, like the beating, bloody black hearts and everything like that. Really gooey type of stuff, and the bodies being set on fire and various other things, like all very well done for a very modest budget type of thing. They did a lot of impressive stuff, like the star power, the quality of the effects work, all that type of stuff comes off very, very well for the kind of money they apparently had. And it's like, I really, really like what they did with the thematic material, with how faith affects man and angel alike, and how that reflects upon different characters. How Gabriel reflects on Thomas, and how that goes back and forth, and how that even reflects on Lucifer. Just like the entire thing of how Lucifer uses his bitterness and his disdain and his loss of faith and love for God and everything like that, and he has Thomas use that. How would an angel feel if he lost his faith? And what fuels an angel is their faith, and kind of use that to kind of twist Gabriel's psychology and his faith and all the different beliefs around, just kind of trying to turn things up on its head. I love how that kind of integrates into our story, how they utilize all those elements overall. It's such a really good, solid piece of work that maybe not get the most glowing reviews of the time, but it's maintained a cult following so much. And so much the entire thing that it created such a solid cult following, and it was such a good, solid success theatrically, it would seem. And certainly home video definitely bolstered that like hell with rentals and sales and everything like that, building up over the time. Really just struck it very hard for this theological thriller. So there's no doubt that Dimension Films, and though they're going direct to video for everything like that, it felt like there was a much more lucrative type of thing to kind of keep the budget kind of a little bit lower, a little bit more towards that kind of cult audience to keep them coming back for the entire thing. So when you get up to 1998, in January of the entire year, you get The Prophecy 2 released to home video. Now, of course, since it's home video, we don't have any kind of stats for budget or video sales or anything like that, how kind of lucrative it was. But overall, apparently because they also made a third film and subsequently a fourth and a fifth that really don't have anything to do mainly with these films in this regard, definitely shows they had a little bit of a success on the front of The Prophecy 2 hitting home video. And they did move on to a different director here, Greg Spence, who just done one of the Children of Corn sequels for Dimension Films, so clearly someone was already in the house and kind of just transitioned him over to this thing. Gregory Widen apparently was very friendly with the producer of the entire thing, unlike the Highlander franchise where he just like involved in the first film and they just went off in that direction, and he went off over here and wasn't really doing anything involved with those people. But it was kind of still kind of creatively involved to a certain degree. Maybe write a couple scenes for the second film and just have a little bit of a relation in that regard. So he's still getting executive producer credit, but had new screenwriters in the other thing and a new director, and kind of go off in a little bit of a different direction here. For The Prophecy 2, I've always felt that this film was like, it's still well directed, there's some good things in the film, but I've always felt a little bit off about this one. There's certain qualities about the film that feel like they fall off to a certain degree. The main thing is the aesthetics, because like 98% of this movie is all shot at night. And I don't really understand exactly what the reason was for it, because I've heard time and time again, like shooting at night is more expensive. Because certainly when you're looking at exterior locations, you've got to get generators and grip trucks and cables, a whole bunch of crew to light everything up like crazy. So it creates a lot of stuff. So like most of the film is shot at night when you had all those beautiful golden vistas in the first film. Just use that scenery so much. And even if you want to use just Los Angeles in the daytime, it still could create a different aesthetic overall. But this one just always felt very kind of like just visually dark and bleak and kind of oppressive to a certain degree. It doesn't really have that glowing life the first film had. So it kind of just brings things down to a certain degree in terms of that visual tone they're going for, even though stuff is still very well shot. But also feels like there's some points in the entire thing where you still have Richard Clayball coming on as the director of photography. Certain points, like when you have some of these action sequences, where you have, like, for some reason, Glenn Danzig is in the film, the big rock star, who comes in as one of the renegade angels, and he's kind of having this fight scene, and it's like, it's not very well shot. It's like, it's all very kind of close-up shots, it's very chaotic. I couldn't really tell who was beating on who, and who was getting kind of ripped apart in certain places. It was very, very, very unclear what was exactly going on with the sequence. Like, you need to pull the camera back so we can see what's happening. We got all these dark, shadowy figures, are all dressed in these dark black coats and all kind of dark, long hair. Everyone looks the same. So if you don't put enough light on people, you don't open up the frame enough, I don't know who that was good doing what to who in this entire sequence here. And the Prophecy 2 starts out a brand new story arc here with Angel Danielle sent on a mission to mate with a human female to give birth to the savior of humanity and angel alike, but has to contend with the returning Gabriel, who is intent on killing the woman and the child inside of her. And oddly enough, it's the same story as the Terminator, but not nearly done as well. It's like, okay, you replace cyborgs and time travel with just angels in heaven. That's all there is. But the problem is, you don't have leads that have it in chemistry. And the fact is, you don't have enough depth or dimension with these characters. Like, Jennifer Beals is a good actress. She works very nicely. I've seen her in the short-lived Fox series, The Chicago Code. Very good type of stuff. She works very well opposite Delroy Lindo and Jason Clarke. A lot of people know her from Flashdance. Bit of a different thing, but she's good. She's solid. She can do good work. But Valerie Zales doesn't have any character. It's like they have this little thing like, oh, she just talks about this like short-lived marriage she had to this guy who really didn't put the time and effort into the relationship and things fell apart and he walked on her and stuff like that. It's like the starting of something, but you don't really go anywhere. It's like you never find out anything that really kind of defines who she is, what she believes in, where she fits in the world, how she kind of absorbs all the type of stuff. What is her belief system? No, that's not really addressed through the entire film. There's no really dimension of a character here. She's just kind of like in the plot, but doesn't have quite as much to say for herself. She does have some agency by the end of the film. She does kind of take a stand and kind of cements her place in the entire war here and what she's going to do with this child. So I do like that. But for the rest of the film, it's like there's not a lot of stuff for really to kind of like say this defines the character. What she is, who she is, what influences her decisions as the entire film goes on. Because as you have the entire thing with Russell Wong as Danielle, I don't find him very good. I don't find that he feels like a very cold character. He's an angel sent on a mission to impregnate a woman to be a cog in the entire war here. And it's like they're supposed to have the entire thing where he kind of like takes a turn and becomes more affectionate towards her, becomes more protective of her, and has much more of the rogue mentality when Archangel Michael, portrayed by Eric Roberts, kind of lets Gabriel into Eden, which is now this big industrial factory, kind of saying this is what man is made of, the garden. And listen, it's like, no, my people are going to try to stop you. You can try to take her if you want. But if she chooses not to, then you're going to have to fight with her and stuff like that. But Daniel goes off in his entire way and trying to fight for her and stuff like that. There's just not any kind of charisma from his performance. There's not a thing that feels like there's warmth, there's compassion, there's humanity within what he's doing. It doesn't feel like he kind of moves anywhere in the entire story here. It's like he just does things without having a kind of emotive quality about what he's doing. It's just kind of like the clinical turns in the entire story here, but you don't feel what he's doing. You don't feel his choices. You don't feel any kind of spark between the two characters whatsoever. There's nothing there. They have moments where they're trying to manufacture that, but it never comes through on screen. I don't feel like these two have any bit of chemistry. When you're looking at something like The Terminator, when you have someone like Sarah Connor, who has a dimension and an arc to the entire story here, and you feel her building up as a stronger character, building her resolve and adapting to the situation, becoming much more that heroic character that she's destined to become. Valerie's not quite that. She's like I said, she's got a little bit of a progression, but there's not as much dimension in her character overall. And certainly like when you have someone like a Kyle Reese character who has that deep vulnerability in this character. You can feel the affection and the kind of frayed ends of the character. You can feel a lot of different emotions from what that character is giving you on screen. When you have Danielle, it's just like there's just this, it's too distant in a emotive sense in that regard. But moving on to Christopher Walken, still fantastic, still doing great work, coming back as Gabriel, being ejected from hell as a contrivance for the plot. It's like, Lucifer just says, there's not room enough for hell in both of us. This is not my war. This is your war. So it's just like, we're contriving things because we got to extend the war because we're doing more films. So, as it is. As you get used to as a genre fan, certain contrivances to get the kind of main character, the main villain back on the entire steps or whatnot of the plot in that regard. And Walken's still good. He's still doing good stuff, but I do feel like there's not as much kind of substance, not nearly as much substance as he had in the first film. He had stuff to work off of Koteas and Mortensen and Madsen and various other things. Stoltz as well. It's like they had a lot of dynamics to work with different characters here. There's not really as much there. There's not as much substance into the thematic materials of the film for Gabriel to kind of grapple with and kind of go over. It's kind of the similar stuff he's dealing with since the first film, just slightly repackaged to a certain degree without as much kind of interesting characters to bounce off of and having various things going on. And so the interesting thing is, the person that he has the most chemistry and shines the most with the entire film is Brittany Murphy as the character of Izzy. The character that he brings back to be is kind of like talking monkey. She's magnificent in the film. It's like, it makes the heartbreak of the tragedy of her passing away at such a young age so very hard to reconcile. And seeing how good she was in just a little role like this, where she kind of got Walken smitten with her. Like, there's certain points when he's doing scenes with her, and they're kind of, again, they're shooting so much things at night, they're losing the nighttime. The daylight's starting to come up, and he's kind of lobbying with the filmmakers. I don't think you're giving her enough time on the coverage. I think you need to give her more time to work the scene over. And so it's like the whole thing, we only got so much time, we only got so much money, we got to keep things moving to a certain degree. But he was very much, he loved working with her apparently. And I could just see like everyone on the film absolutely loved her so much. And she's so good as Izzy. She's got this spitfire behind her a little bit because she's got this kind of aversion towards Gabriel. It's like she's willing to help him to a certain degree, but the thing like when he's telling her like, you got to run Valerie down, you got to run this lady over, you got to kill her. She doesn't want to do that. That wasn't part of the bargain here. And so she takes it upon herself. She fastens the seatbelt and just rams the thing and knows, as her boyfriend did earlier, he's going to go running right through the windshield and kind of knock him out, or hopefully going to take him out. But it's just like, I love the chemistry between the two of them. They're so good together. They create such a wonderful, bittersweet element between the two of them so much. Like, she's got so much emotive quality of what she's doing on screen. It's such a young actress. She's got so much talent here, and you feel so much vibrance what she's doing with every single thing. It's like she's holding her own against Christopher Walken. That's something you just have to praise so much. Every time I've seen this film, she's just incredible. She's the one thing I really absolutely unconditionally love in the film. I just like, she is, you can see why she became a star so quickly after this. Just rising up, but then unfortunately certain things happened and she did pass away far too soon. But she was just so goddamn good in this character of Izzy. Oh my god. And we get Steve Hytner back. Very good type of thing. Not as much as he's going to get in the next film, but it's nice to have this character kind of thread through these films. So nice, I think, as like I said, the first film, very good actor. He's very diverse when he can bring to the role, and it's a really good job to kind of just keep the thing going forward and keep that tether through the entire storylines you got going on, the whole thing. But interesting enough, they do bring the character of Thomas Daggett back, but not Elias Koteas, because Elias, same as Viggo Mortensen, who Lucifer does pop in a little bit in the film, but it's not Mortensen, he's rising up. He's doing stuff like Apt Pupil and Fallen and Thin Red Line and various other things. He's pumping up his career, because the film Fallen gets released in theaters 4 days before this gets released in home video. So he was likely shooting scenes with Denzel Washington at the same time they're kind of doing this film. So even though Fallen wasn't a big box office success in that regard, after he worked with Walken, I think Denzel is a very good next choice in that regard. And while they use Lucifer in very limited capacity in this regard, bringing Thomas Daggett back, having another scene with Gabriel, and having the entire thing where Gabriel kind of burns him alive. Very much emotionally distant from the entire thing because you know it's not Elias Koteas in the role, bringing that same soulful quality he had at the end of the first film. So it just kind of creates less of an impact from the entire scene overall. And having Eric Roberts here as Archangel Michael, like, he's pretty damn good. It's nice little work he does here because, I mean, I've always heard that he's a very good actor to get along with. Like, he works on so many different sets. He does, like, dozens of films a year. From high-grade stuff like The Dark Knight, some B-tier type of stuff like your best of the best movies, and some real dirt cheap type of stuff. But he's always got bills to pay, and he keeps working. But I've always heard he's a very personable guy on set, very easy to work with, and he puts in a really good role here. An angel with a very good, peaceful aura about him. Like, he doesn't have that vitriol that Gabriel has in our worlds. Like, I have a very calm sensibility. I'm very much at peace with where I am and the entire grander scheme of things in that regard. So it's maybe just a tad bit of a siphoning off from what Simon had, but it's like you can see where that comes from. If it comes down from Michael down to Simon, you can see where that influence goes in that regard, and he's kind of pulling that stuff together. So it's not a whole lot of screen time, but you can definitely feel the value of his character in the pantheon of this entire story here. So he does a very good job in that regard. I think he has a nice bit of work with Gabriel and Walken in that one scene they have together there. But the interesting thing that happens with Gabriel at the end of the film, where Valerie Rizal says, you're just not listening to God anymore because she can hear God through her child, and then she dives off and skewers Gabriel, and Michael makes him human, makes him a mortal being that transitions into the next sequel, but just like a very interesting way to leave this character with a little bit of a open road to changing how his perspective will be going forward. But ultimately, the cast of The Prophecy 2 is a little bit uneven, to say the least. Some things are like real good gems like Brittany Murphy. Some things are miscast with like Russell Wong, kind of an underwritten lead with Jennifer Beals and the whole thing. So things don't quite land quite as strongly as they did in the first film. And there's certainly feels like there's a lack of thematic material in the story. Like the first film had like very strong through lines of what was going on with the themes of the story. This one, they had some ideas like kind of the inflection of angel and human, and the kind of thing to kind of unionize them and whatnot. Like, it's an idea there, but it's not really feel like a theme that we're going through, talking about philosophies and where characters are coming from and different viewpoints, stuff like that. It's not really built into the story there, so it just feels like it kind of lands a little bit flat in what they're trying to do with the story here. And certainly with the lower budget, not as many visual effects shots, very minimal type of things, and certainly the mega effects, there are a couple things here and there, but nearly as much as they were in the first film, so everything's just a little bit of a step down, and something's a little bit kind of awkward in how they kind of handle some of the subject matter in the film. But apparently the film was enough of a success, because obviously they were clearly planning for a third film, and definitely greenlight, but they didn't shoot like back-to-back type of films, so they kind of shot the second one, saw how it did, moved on to the third one, which got released in March of 2000 on home video for The Prophecy 3, The Ascent. And this time, directing duties get handed over to Patrick Lussier, who was very much a well-known editor at the time, working with Wes Craven on New Nightmare, the first 3 Scream films, and eventually gets some more directing duties after this from Dimension Films and other bodies, such as their Dracula trilogy starting with Dracula 2000. Eventually directs the My Bloody Valentine 3D remake several years after this. I feel like him, and with producer Joel Swartzon jumping as a co-writer on the whole film, I feel like there's new blood in the entire film, especially even with the new cinematographer's role, Nathan Hope. A lot of people can inject something more energetic into the formula of what they're doing here against what was done in the previous film. I feel like there's just a lot more momentum in the story. It hits the ground running and keeps up a good, solid, brisk pace as it goes along through the entire story here. And so the story with The Prophecy 3 picks up many years after the previous film, as the Nephilim Daniel has grown up to be a young adult, several years after the passing of his mother, and the angel Zophiel has been sent to kill the Nephilim on behalf of Puriel, a genocidal angel looking to wipe out humanity and end this war. And I feel like Lucy has a much more confident feeling about doing a lot of the action sequences, and you can kind of see they're probably doing a lot more kind of like wire work and stuff like that. And this is shortly after The Matrix hit theaters, so I can imagine they're a little bit inspired in that regard to kind of do some of these flippy floppy type of things, like Vincent Spano's Zophiel and all the other characters here, kind of adding a little bit more panache into the action sequences, and they're just shot better than the last film. There's a lot more, like I say, confidence in what they're doing, a much more clear line of geography and kind of showing what's happening with different characters. And certainly a lot more of this film actually takes place in the daytime, and they utilize daytime Los Angeles and certainly back in the desert to a very good extent. So I feel like some of the visual splash you had in the first film kind of comes back on this one, using a lot more of the similar sort of locations and aesthetics and various other things in that regard. So they just kind of bring the entire thing back to a different feeling overall that feels much more akin to the first film than the second one was, with its much more dark aesthetics. And we got a lot of new talent in the entire film here. Starting with Vincent Spano doing the character of Zophiel, this new sort of Terminator-esque angel coming down to complete the business of this entire war here, and he had a great time the whole thing. He was like, this was a real freeing experience for him to play this kind of like just bulldozer of a character. He's just zeroed in exactly what he needs to do and just going for it 100% of the time. So it's like he definitely admits this is very Terminator inspired, what he was doing with the character, and I like the fact that he's kind of relishing the whole thing. You can definitely tell like he's not playing it too over the top. You can definitely see like he's having a lot of fun playing this character and giving a lot of backbone into what he's doing here. I just found it a very refreshing character that, as this character of Zophiel, is much more of a, almost like a more extremist version of what Gabriel was before, because Gabriel kind of believed in a certain thing that's not exactly what Zophiel believes in. He believes in this imperial characters about this genocide that's going to happen across all humanity, and Gabriel was never quite about that. He was just like, I want to win back my side in the war and kind of feel like I'm the one who's going over the top of humanity. He didn't want to wipe out humanity. He just wanted to feel like he was superior to them so much. And so Zophiel's kind of going off in this entire story, being much more that dark reflection where Gabriel was and where he could have gone in different directions in that regard. So it's a nice thing, because since Gabriel was made human at the end of the last film, he's been living as his vagrant human the last couple of years, has actually turned a corner. He's actually been protecting Daniel this entire time, as Valerie got killed in this sort of lynch mob sort of thing, and Daniel's been going off and living on the kind of fringes of society and whatnot. He's kind of left the kind of belief in God behind him, and kind of like says like, God just doesn't care anymore, and he's left us all to abandon and stuff like that. It's an interesting little character arc for him, but seeing the fact that Zophiel has that dark reflection upon Gabriel where he is now, and kind of giving him more of a context like, man, I was kind of like you at one point in time, but not quite as extreme, and stuff like that. So you can definitely see the context and the contrast of the characters, and it's a very refreshing type of thing. And like I said, Spano does a great job. He's just going all the way in on the character and does a fantastic job being a great villain for the entire film, while having still some interesting scenes that kind of does a little bit of the manipulation, but you also see a lot more of the depth of why he's doing what he's doing, even though he has a bit of a crooked mindset about why he's doing certain things and backing Imperial in his entire war here. And Dave Buzzotta is the young adult version of Daniel the Nephilim that was born from Valerie Rosales. He does a really good job here, and I like the fact that his story has much more of a propulsiveness and more agency for his character than it did for his mother in the previous film. There's a lot of good things he does, like he's given a lot of things to grapple with. Not as much time devoted to as you could for a much higher budgeted film in that regard, to kind of keep things kind of restrained to that 80 to 90 minute runtime. There's only so much they have time to really kind of explore in that regard, but I think Buzzotta does a good job to fill the role out very well, to kind of grapple with the destinies and the truths that he's kind of have to face and kind of own up to in certain things like that. So certainly more time if they had it for the entire film to expand it out further, have things kind of flesh out and kind of more grapple with deeper themes in that regard. Could have been better in some cases, but I think with him as an actor, he does a very good job to inhabit the role and be believable what he has to do throughout the entire course of the film, of course. And very good chemistry with Kayren Butler as the character of Maggie here. She does a really good job. He has a very strong sensibility here that I feel aids the film as she's kind of splintered off from Daniel and the whole thing, as she gets kind of hooked in with Zophiel, and he's kind of feeding her certain like half-truths and kind of crooked lies in some places, and kind of string her along the entire thing, because again, angels don't know how to drive, so he has to get a monkey to kind of do these things for him. I like the fact that they went a slightly different route with certain things. Like in the previous two films, Gabriel kind of brings someone back from near death to be kind of his monkey on Earth to kind of do the little dirty work type of stuff. Here, they kind of don't do the exact same thing. They have another character who's in the plot and alive and tied into things that can be weaved around in that regard. So I like the fact that that is kind of utilized with this character in the film, who has a tie to the main character. It just creates more interesting dynamics to work with. It just creates a more again, propulsive story that maintains a certain compelling quality that has drama, has stakes with it, and stuff like that. So I very much like how that's kind of constructed and how they brought in these characters. And certainly having someone even with a small role like Brad Dourif coming the whole thing is this kind of blind zealot that's kind of go off. He's been hearing angelic voices tell him to do things, and in that regard, probably Zophael or Imperial, whatnot, tell him to go off to kill Danielle. Of course, you have to take out the heart to kind of finish the job in that regard, but it's like Dourif is always such a great presence. No matter what he's doing in any type of role, he's always phenomenal, and so much variety what he can do with a certain character, and he just sinks in this role absolutely perfectly, and kind of gives the film a little bit more sort of weight and credibility, just having his presence there as a sort of short-lived character in the film, but it adds an extra layer of importance to what he does in the entire film as kind of actor he is. Academy Award nominated actor with such a long string of genre credits in that regard. But going off again, you got Steve Hytner coming back as Joseph, and they give him the most to do with the character this time out, as he's gone through these previous two films with all these weird things happening, where he's kind of delved much deeper into the scripture and the literature and everything like that to learn about all this type of stuff as it keeps happening, it keeps coming across him. I like the fact that Hytner is completely up to the job of making this character, again, dynamic, entertaining, likable, relatable, and stuff like that. He's got a certain emotional weight upon him, and just like it weaves all that lore of everything that's happened in the previous two films up into this one character to give a certain weight to what's happened, a certain lineage of all the things that have gone down to kind of keep it kind of boxed in with this one guy, to kind of let it out to Maggie to a certain degree, let her be clued in about what's happening here, but still creates a great tether, because that's such a great actor and creates such a nice character that the fans really kind of took to in that regard. But Walken, again, as you've taken Gabriel towards another path here, you're not doing the same old thing. It's something fresh from the play in the film. It's a character that does have a little bit more substance and things to offer on the story than I kind of remembered him having. Kind of felt like memory served that the fact he was just more of this side character, kind of observing the events of the film, but not really be terribly involved with the plot. He's not integral to the plot, but he has certain interjections in the plot that creates a certain depth and meaning to what's going on here. He has a certain observation towards Daniel or Zophael or something else like that to comment about what's going on and give a little context. So a certain quality, there's a light sort of arc playing around with him in the background and him rediscovering what the awe and the majesty of the Word of God is and the whole thing. And he finally comes around back at the end of the film reclaiming his grace. All the type of stuff, he earns it back through rediscovering everything through Danielle. The film gives him that conclusion of an arc to see the error of his ways and come back to being someone who's worthy of everything that God created and everything like that. So I like the fact that they tied all those elements in with Danielle and Zophael, Imperial, and Gabriel, and have all that stuff really come together very, very nicely overall. So I think on a story level, this one really comes together much stronger than the previous film. I think it has not the strongest themes, but at least has some themes to deal with overall, to see the reflection of where you come from and dealing with destinies and seeing what you need to do to step up to own up to what you are and various other things. So it's got certain things going on, but at least it's a good solid momentum, good solid characters, good solid performances. It feels like much more of an even playing field overall from what they did in the previous film to what they're doing here overall with the brand new screenwriters, the new director, the new cinematographer, everything like that. I feel like there's just much more of a fresh sensibility with the Ascent than there was with the second film of the franchise, and keeps a little bit more of the tether back to the first one, because you get Mary coming back. Moriah Shining Dove Snyder comes back in this film. It's a little bit of a touchback to the original films. They're going back on the desert, the same areas they're kind of dealing with at the end of the first film. So nice little story tie-ins and stuff like that. Just feels like it all just comes full circle here. It's a very nice piece of work in that regard. And they kind of felt like they were so kind of floored by Moriah Shining Dove Snyder. They kind of felt like, well, if they knew how good she was at the beginning of things, because they shot her stuff way at the end of the production, if they knew they were going to have her in the film earlier, knew much more about her talent and her quality, they might have wove her much stronger in the film as maybe the girlfriend of Daniel and stuff like that, and kind of refashion the script, because they did a lot of things, kind of reshuffling some elements here and there, because originally, like, Zophael was like the hero of the film, and they kind of turned him into the Terminator bad guy in the entire film. So they really kind of were shuffling a lot of ideas around there, kind of quickly developing the screenplay and the whole thing. But I still think they came up with a pretty nice, solid sort of conclusion for the Gabriel arc for the franchise in this regard. And certainly they have more effects in this film, because with the entire thing of Imperial, they have all these flashes of the giant piles of bodies and various other things. Like, it's very haunting and very impactful images that are kind of flashing up on the screen to give this sort of impending sensibility about this character, what his prophetic sort of place is in the grander scheme of things. And when you find out more about the fact that he's a genocidal madman to a certain degree, it creates a very interesting dynamic. And certainly, climax is not quite as big and as spectacular as you probably want to think it should be for the entire thing, but of course, again, lower budget because direct-to-video and stuff like that. There's only so much they could do, and certainly Lussier was a little disappointed they couldn't do more with the whole thing. They couldn't open up the scope more and do more things with it, but he kind of worked within the constraints he had, delivered a story that feels fairly satisfying to me. Of course, like the effects work, it's pretty damn good. It's pretty alright for what it is at the time, and it holds up nicely in that regard. So it's not the most spectacular stuff, but I think with the constraints they're working with and what they're kind of doing with the vision overall, I think they did a fairly good job for what they're doing for the medium they were putting it out on, stuff like that. So I think Ascent is a good solid thing. I would definitely say first film, third film, second film in my rankings, the whole thing, because I just think the first film is still magnificent. I just like watching again after so many years. As the fact that there's lines of dialogue I just know back to front, like over and over again. I'm just quoting them over and over again as the film's going on. I've watched it so many times, burned so many things into my memory about the whole thing, and I just think it's a really solid piece of work. Like, it's an interesting little franchise that it bore out from Gregory Widen, created this entire idea here, built off of theology and some high concept ideas here that were embodied originally by some brilliant actors, just like absolutely blockbuster stuff in that regard. So took some interesting stuff. So it was probably best to go direct to video to a certain degree, because it's a nice solid hit, but they kind of pumped a lot more money into it, like they did double the budget and whatnot, and try to sell it again and theatrical for the sequels. Maybe would have had more stuff to work with, more time to develop the screenplay, but who knows how successful it would have been going on and on and on theatrically, especially when they're already starting to do, again, Hellraiser sequels on direct-to-video and stuff like that by the end of the 90s. Feels like they're probably kind of gauging the genre audience to a certain degree. It's like, this one was a nice hit. It wasn't like a runaway success. It didn't make like mountains of money. We could definitely like people are desperately hungry the whole thing. And certainly the reviews for the first film weren't the best, and certainly the sequels got worse and worse reviews as they went on. So they weren't really critical darlings to a certain degree. So I think Dimension Films kind of gauged it the right way to kind of like pretty solid run for the first film theatrically. But we could definitely kind of gear it much more towards that kind of niche, cult genre audience if you go direct to video and keep the budget kind of reasonable in that regard and kind of go off to a certain degree and still maintain some fairly interesting ideas going on with the lore and mythology you have here. So I think they did a pretty good job overall with these three films. They do stand up pretty nicely over time, especially with, like I said, Vinegar Syndrome getting the brand new 4K transfers and all that type of stuff, the new interviews they had with many of the people involved in the films. So it's a nice type of thing. So I'd even like to hear what you guys' thoughts are on the entire first three films. If you have seen the fourth and fifth, let me know what you felt about them, because I never, since it was the end of the Gabriel arc and kind of going off and kind of tacking on two other films that really didn't have as much to really kind of do with this arc of the entire story here. Feels like it was just tacked on, because like I said, refashioned some scripts they had laying around to just kind of tack the prophecy name on them and not really have anyone from these films really recur in those films, so it really kind of feels mostly disconnected in that regard. So definitely like to hear your thoughts on the whole thing. So guys, if you liked what you saw here, thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Super thanks feature to contribute anything directly through YouTube. We've got Patreon to contribute anything directly through that. You get some early access to videos in that regard. So guys, thanks so much. Take care. Bye bye.